Hi everyone, it's Susie here. Apologies this week, I've had a bad head cold and partially lost my voice. But I wanted to share this episode with you, and the majority of it was recorded while I was on vacation in Mexico. So it's only a small part of it that will have this voice, and hopefully by next week I'll be fully recovered. Thank you for listening. Welcome to the Casual Birder podcast, a show for people interested in wild birds. I'm Susie Buttress. As a casual birder, I try to find time to watch birds as I go about my daily tasks. Join me each week to hear about the birds I've seen, interviews with others, and stories from listeners around the world. I recently returned from a vacation in Baja California, Mexico. The main purpose of the trip was a whale watching holiday. And you can hear my interview with whale expert Mark Carwadine in a previous episode where we talk about the whales and the birds that we saw while on the trip. At the end of the whale watching holiday, we said goodbye to the other passengers, hired a car, and headed off to Cabo Palmo on the eastern coast of Baja California. It was our first time driving in Mexico. The roads were very good, except for the last 10 kilometres into the village where we were staying, which was a dirt road. Cabo Palmo is a small village. The area used to be heavily fished, despite the difficulties of transporting the fish and oysters to markets inland. Over time, the fishermen noticed that fish stocks were declining, and that the coral reef was being destroyed by the fishing methods being used. So they worked together to make this area of the coast into a site of natural beauty, and it was made into a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 2005. Today, the economy relies on visiting tourists who snorkel around the reefs or who enjoy boating trips to see whales and other sea creatures. For the tourist who enjoys a low-key holiday, Cabo Palmo is a great village to stay in, with a handful of restaurants and a number of walking trails in the area. The property we'd rented was a delightful little cottage or casita with a mature garden. There were 2 bird baths, and the birds were clearly used to coming in to feed or bathe. It was an ideal location for me. I'm sitting in the garden of the rental property in Cabo Palmo in southern Baja California, doing the most casual of casual birding possible. I've been sitting here all day just noticing the birds that come to the garden. We have a bird bath that's filled up with water, and that seems to attract the birds. And there are birds that are just used to foraging in this garden. One of the first birds I saw last night was a small green-coloured warbler, and my heart sank. I was pleased to see the bird, but I know from experience in England that warblers are notoriously difficult to identify. I filled the bird bath up last night and thought, just wait and see if any birds come to use it. There was another bird bath in the garden a bit further away, and birds were using that. So I was hopeful that they would also come and use this one. We could get to see them a little bit closer. Anyway, the warbler started to come down closer and closer to the water bath, and was making a sort of little tick noise. So I hoped that might help me identify it. But before long, there was a second bird also coming down to investigate the water. And then after about an hour or so, there were about 7 or 8 birds all bathing. And what was interesting was some of them, as they were bathing, I could see a little orangey, rusty crown in amongst the green feathers. And I thought, that has got to be a diagnostic for whatever bird this is. Also, another bird turned up very similar, but with a grey head, where the others were green all over. So I thought, that's excellent. I've got 2 species here. I'll look them up. So I photographed both of them and looked them up. And because of the orange crown, I was able to tell it was an orange-crowned warbler. And as I looked through the pictures on my app, I then found that the first-year juvenile has an ashy grey head. So suddenly, where I thought I had two species, I only had one. But it really helped me identify that it was that species. So yay, I was really pleased about that. This morning I couldn't wait to get out here, and we've been travelling quite a bit over the last 10 days, and so my husband knows that I always like to have, after a lot of travelling, I like to have a day of just chilling out, sitting outside and enjoying the air and just seeing what birds come. So we decided to do that today, and I've been out here for about 8 hours now, and it hasn't got boring at all. There are hooded orioles that we saw very soon after arriving, and they're beautiful yellow birds. The male has got a black face and area down under his chin onto his breast. Very slender birds, and they drink nectar, and they also eat berries and insects. I was sorely tempted to go and buy an orange and put that out for them so that they'd come and drink from the orange. Might still do that yet, who knows. But the female is a little drabber, although still a beautiful colour bird, more lemon green. But again, they've been drinking from the flower spikes out of the cactus, so that's been brilliant. And really, really colourful against the blue sky. Heard some great sounds, and during the day I've been able to identify at least some of them. One of the harshest sort of churring or scolding sounds I've heard, I think, is the cactus wren. I did see one last night, and I could see a down-curved beak and brownish back and spotted underside. And at first I thought it might be a Californian thrasher, because where I've seen birds before, if you heard that noise in the background just then, that's apparently a gecko. They make noises here. I don't think I've ever heard geckos make noises before. But that took me a while because I thought it was a bird. So I was looking for that and then read that geckos make those noises. So I thought that I had seen a Californian thrasher, but checking the app I found they're not found this far down. So I was a bit stumped about that one. And then this morning I saw something similar again, but I saw the underside of the tail. Really, really spotted. And I double checked the app, and the cactus wren has that. And listening to the sounds on the app, I recognise that's the bird we've been hearing. A lot of chirring noises in the background. I hope they'll call again. It's just getting to evening now and cooling down, so hopefully there'll be more birds around. And then today, because we've been here all day, we've seen lots and lots of other birds. So I already knew that there were turkey vultures flying over, and they came particularly low just after lunch, and I'd cooked some hot dog sausages out on the barbecue, and we were just finishing off eating them, and I noticed a vulture particularly low, and then John saw a couple of other vultures really low as well, so I guess they honed in on the sausages. And I've also heard ravens calling as well. While we were on the whale watching cruise, the Gila Woodpecker had been spotted on a couple of the islands, but I hadn't seen it. So I was a bit disappointed that that was one of the birds I hadn't seen off the bird list. And when John went out for a walk last night, he came back and said he'd seen the funniest thing. He'd seen something that looked like a woodpecker pecking away at the centre of someone's satellite dish, and it made sounds like drums. And sure enough, this morning we were sitting here quietly, and we suddenly heard a woodpecker drumming away on metal. A little bit later I saw the pair of them, and it was the Gila Woodpecker. So I have now finally seen that, and that's a tick on my list. They have olivey coloured heads and sort of laddered markings, black and white markings along their back, but they're quite narrow, so from a distance they can look quite one-coloured, quite smooth-coloured. The male has got a red spot on the back of the head, but I haven't seen it close enough to see that. Or it's possible that I saw two females. Oh, the other thing they have here are white-winged doves. When we were on, I think it was Isla Bonita, but I could be wrong, I saw a collared dove. Well, I heard it first, calling out, and I thought, it cannot be a collared dove here in the middle of on the Pacific coast of Baja California. And I looked around with my binoculars and saw it straight away, and yes, indeed, it was a collared dove. But I hadn't seen the white-winged dove, which other people had seen on the tour on other islands, which apparently are fairly common, and I'd not managed to see any of them. And one of the first birds I saw here was a white-winged dove, and I could see straight away that's what it was. They look like collared doves in that they're very similar shape. Their colour is a little bit more towards a wood pigeon, so a little bit more grey than pinkish. And they've got a spot on their neck rather than the half collar that the collared dove has. And they've got very obvious white edges to their wings when their wings are folded. So quite clearly white-winged dove. What's interesting is that they sound very similar to collared doves, but just a little different. And I think there's one calling right now. Hold on, let's see if we can catch it. One thing I haven't seen here yet in this garden, although I have seen on the trip, is a hummingbird. So fingers crossed for that. There are hummingbird feeders around, so they must be around. I have to say all the feeders look a bit cloudy, so I don't think they're fresh. There isn't one on this property where I'm staying, so I can't influence changing them. Back to the white-winged dove. Yes, it's got a very similar call to the collared dove, and it's so strange to hear a sound that almost sounds right, but isn't quite. On that note, the orioles make a sound a bit like house sparrows, and they'll sort of chirrup, but have a song in amongst the chirrups. And I've seen them making the chirrups. I know it's them making the chirrup. Earlier this afternoon, I suddenly became aware that I could hear house sparrows, and I was certain they were house sparrows. So I went hunting around the garden, and yes, I found the house sparrows. A couple of times we've heard very sharp calls that sound like a bird shouting out, and it's very noticeable, very harsh and very sudden. And I just couldn't see what it was because there's quite a lot of undergrowth in the garden. It's difficult to see the tops of trees. I'd heard it a few times, and then a bit later on in the afternoon I heard it again as a bird swept into the garden, and I saw it from underneath at first, so I couldn't quite see the colours on it. So I thought, maybe it's the mockingbird or something's making a loud noise. And then it swooped down to the bird bath, and it was a scrub jay. So I should have realised when I heard the harsh call, of course, it was a jay. And actually 2 of them came down to bathe at the bird bath. The scrub jays have still got a beautiful blue colour like the blue jays, but they don't have the crest. They do have a ring around the neck, I believe, but it's a softer colour, it's not the harsh black. What else have I seen? It's all from just sitting in the garden and looking around and then getting up and walking around the garden when I hear calls that are unfamiliar. Might be able to hear that one sort of... Oh, yes. So I think that is a cardinal, northern cardinal. So we're very lucky in this garden. Not only do we have hooded orioles, we have a pair of northern cardinals. And the male is just beautiful, beautiful red colour, especially when you catch him in a branch with the blue sky behind. The female is less colourful, but still has a real beautiful look to her. She's got a red crest, a reddish-orange beak, and red flashes in the wings, but she's mostly brown. But the male is just a stunning, stunning deep red, and it's a real treat to see him. And John hadn't seen one close up before, and I'd only had fleeting glimpses, so I was really, really pleased to see that. Just a moment ago, or about 20 minutes ago, a new bird turned up, and the song sounded familiar, sort of a little wheeze or a little plaintive call, but it sounded familiar to me. I could see it had a forked tail, and it was yellowy coloured. It had a very pointed beak, and I recognised it as a lesser goldfinch. So pleased about that. I think that might be the cactus wren having a little bit of a scold. I didn't quite see what it was. I'm sitting quietly near the bird bath, waiting for birds to come in for the evening. See if I can see what that is. Oh yeah, there's 2 of them, 2 cactus wrens behind me. Oh, and I just didn't have my camera in the right spot to be able to take those photographs. They were sitting on a stump. Oh, one of the little orange-crowned warblers has just turned up at the bird bath. Take a little delicate sip. And they're lovely, sort of a lightish green below and olive green above. Very plain little bird. And it's only because I know they have an orange crown that I know to look for it, and sometimes you can see it. You can hear the white-winged doves calling now. I've still to take a photograph of them. Just trying to remember the other species that I've seen here. So I've seen the Scrub Jay. Oh, house finch. I've seen 2 male house finches and a female house finch. One of the male house finches, unfortunately, has got a broken upper beak, but he seems okay. I mean, he may not be able to preen very well, but he's drinking okay, and I guess eating okay. But a bit sad to see. I think I've seen a northern mockingbird. John took a photograph of a bird that looks very much like one, so I'm waiting to confirm that one. I've not heard one singing, as far as I know. But I know that they can mimic other birds, so maybe it's doing that, so I don't recognise it. So I've just checked my listing that I've made on the Audubon app, and yeah, there's been 13 species in the garden today. So lesser goldfinch, northern cardinal, white-winged dove, house sparrow, hooded oriole, turkey vulture, orange-crowned warbler, house finch, cactus wren, and then I've seen common raven and Gila woodpecker from the garden. I've got northern mockingbird down, as I'm 80% certain that's right, but I'll take that off if it's incorrect, and Californian Scrub Jay. So that's not bad for sitting in the garden all afternoon. We've had breakfast out here and lunch out here, and we had little does as well, but don't tell anyone. And it's been the absolutely perfect casual birding day with lots of exciting sounds around. So I'm looking forward to going out for a walk later on and seeing what other birds are in the locality.
On the walk down to the beach later that afternoon, I saw a Costa's hummingbird, osprey, American kestrel, and on the beach I watched the brown pelicans diving for fish in the shallows. I really enjoyed my time staying in that casita and watching all the birds.
I'd love to know what birds you've seen this week. Join our Facebook group to discuss this week's episode, or post your photos of the birds you've seen. I really do enjoy hearing your tales, so come and join the conversation there. Find us at facebook.com/groups/Casual Birder Podcast. Follow me on Twitter at Casual Birder Pod, or on Instagram at Casual Birder Podcast. You can email me at casualbirderpod@gmail.com. Make sure you don't miss any episodes by subscribing to the show. Subscribing is free and you can do it wherever you listen. If you enjoy the show, please consider posting about it on social media. Personal recommendation is such a valuable way of helping others find the show. Thank you to Braun for designing the artwork for the show. The theme music is Short Sleeved Shirt by the Drones. Thanks to them for letting me use it. Check out their website at www.dronesmusic.net. Thank you all for listening, and I hope you'll join me again for another episode of the Casual Birder Podcast.